Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
It's true. Welcome to Plank of the Week. It's Friday night, it's talkTV. It's the one place you have to be because it's the only place where you don't get judged. You can say whatever you want. You can nominate whoever you wish. It could be a country, it could be an organisation, it could be a member of the royal family, or maybe even one of their staff. Who can say? But let's kick things off tonight with the panel. Tonight, I'm very pleased to say, Andre Walker returns. He hasn't been long gone. Esther Krakue's here as well. Very nice to see you. Claire Fox joins us in the big studio for the first time. And the one and only Jeremy Kyle has spared us some time as well to join.
Delighted to be here.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Very nice to see you. Now, we're all colour coordinated. A lot of blue today. This is what we're fighting for. Plank of the Week. Where's the noise? Oh, dear. Anyway, let's kick things off with Andre Walker. Give us your first plank, Andre.
My first plank is the Royal Mail. We're obviously all watching the World Cup. Some of us are concerned about what's gone on in Qatar with all these people dying.
Yes.
But we all want to be a bit patriotic for England or indeed for Wales.
Yes.
And the Royal Mail has banned the flying of either the English or the Welsh flag by their members of staff. They're citing health and safety.
Really?
I think it's because they just feel that the English flag is somehow racist or sectarian or whatever.
Do you know, it's funny, I haven't
disgusting.
seen any English flags. I think I've seen 2 English flags. I've seen one house covered in English flags. Normally during the World Cup, there's loads of it, isn't there?
I'm really confused. I thought they were on strike.
Yeah, that's what I thought he was nominated.
Well, I think if they go into work, they're not allowed to bring a flag with them.
The truth of the matter is that this is an indication about why the unions are right to go on strike, because they've got stupid employers making silly decisions.
I have to say, of all of the strikes, and we're going to be covering a lot of them on this show, I think, tonight, of all of the strikers, you know, the post office employers seem to be the worst of all.
Exactly. I mean,
the NHS are pretty useless, but the post office really does seem to be ridiculous.
Terrible bosses. And to have introduced this, I mean, I wouldn't mind, but the whole point about football is that rivalry. And the Welsh-English rivalry, which I'm from Wales, which
I'm so sorry.
It was always one of those moments where you wanted to be like,
we should acknowledge that, you know, first time in 64 years, they did well to get there. But
I know.
To be honest, they were rubbish,
They were no good, right?
They were rubbish.
We know that. But what you want is a bit of healthy rivalry. It is perfectly
but do you know what's
not allowed to do that anymore.
Do you know what's funny? I mean, it's all right. You can be a nationalist if you're Welsh or Scottish. All right, but you can't be an English nationalist because then you're some kind of bigot and a racist, right?
Absolutely true.
Because I was listening to the BBC... Forgive me. I was flicking around, right? Got the Today programme for 5 minutes and punishing myself. They were so desperate to big up Wales. They were talking to some Welsh people going, but it's great, isn't it? You've got this great national symbol. You've got the Welsh flag.
Why do the BBC never miss an opportunity to slag off everything
They hate
about
everything
this
about England, right?
But they don't understand that most people who live in Wales are perfectly happy to be patriotic about supporting the football team, but aren't anti-english. There is a small minority... Is becoming more toxic.
But Mike's right. If we support England, we are racist or unfair.
Can't wave a flag.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think Welsh nationalism, in a sense, is not a bad thing because they're interested in heritage, they're interested in language, and I think those bits of it.
Bit of cottage burning.
Can we put into context that Mark Drakeford's their leader? That sums it all up.
Well, I have to say, very few people dance better at the Diwali event than Mark Drakeford. I mean, he really went
during a COVID lockdown. You know, this is a man who had Tesco's, you know, sort of sealed off in case you were buying things you might not need.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything like that?
Oh God.
Very quiet today, Esther. Is something wrong?
I know.
What's going on?
I was going to say, because of the football, when they mentioned the football, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really excited. I was going to say, I think the only reason why we're not seeing English flags around is because they want to see how far they're going to get. They don't want to, like, crash out.
Yeah, but it's been worse than this. I mean, after the first game, it was, right, we're coming home, it's coming home.
Yeah, I mean, it's too early. I think the Euros have taught us to be cautiously optimistic.
But we've been told that the English flag is racist and to fly it is sectarian and it's morally wrong to do it. And I'm sick to death of being ashamed to be English. I think England is one of the greatest countries on earth.
I know, but I just don't think that's why they're not flying it this time.
But I don't
that's not what's really going on.
I live, right, in what can only be described as Millwall territory, right?
Yeah.
And
I thought it was splendid where you live.
Yes, it is lovely, but I mean, one side of the road is slightly different to the other, but the other side of the road is where
Which gang are you in?
Where Millwall.
He's a crit.
Literally, you know, whenever England play in anything, it's absolutely festooned. They've got, you know, first out the Christmas decorations, but the house opposite me, which is normally covered in flags, not one.
But I think no, but don't you think there's a problem with this World Cup?
I don't think
people can afford to buy a flag.
People have been... Millwall supporters have got them in the back garden, right? I mean, there's
cost of living crisis, woman.
There's plenty of Albanian flags you could fly if you wish. That's not a problem.
Mike and I are doing this.
To be fair, I think the people are ambiguous about this World Cup because they're all the fuss about Qatar.
Yeah.
actually
I don't think that the Millwall fans are that worried about Qatar's international policy.
I didn't say that, Mike. I'm suggesting that it's caused less excitement.
Yes.
I mean, they're just not as much enthusiasm.
I think it's in the wrong place at the wrong time of year. It's really weird
people
that it's
are just,
November.
and they kind of know.
I'm a celebrity in November, yes, but the World Cup's all a bit messed up.
But when you're talking
actually, it's been good. The football's actually
it's ruining my television show.
England doesn't mean.
When you're talking about symbolism, though, I have to say, look, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but the whole gay rights issue is not a big issue in Qatar. Slavery, 6,500 people dying building the stadiums. Nobody gives a toss. Nobody is wearing an anti-slavery banner.
They say it was 3, of course.
Well, do you know something? We've got people.
It's a big area, that.
We've got people who are kicking off about slavery in Virginia 300 years ago who don't give a toss about what's gone on in Qatar. Yeah. I think it's disgusting.
I don't know how we got from the Royal Mail to that.
I don't know how you managed to say toss 3 times in 30 seconds.
I know, extraordinary. Anyway, you're up next.
Yes, well, it's a bit predictable that it should be Sadiq Khan because obviously he features regularly. Yeah. But actually, it's not even him. It's his ultra-low emissions zone, the ULEZ zone.
Yes.
And the reason why I'm particularly irritated about Sadiq Khan, basically, this is like, it feels like a money laundering scheme. They've made this...
might very well be.
They've made this zone so large now that London is expanding every time they announce
Apparently London goes to Orpington.
They really are collecting a lot of money. We are in the middle of a cost of living crisis. Right. People are genuinely worried about how they're going to get through. And entirely artificially, somebody just said, we'll come along and get some more money. This is a stealth tax. And this is the opposition government to the government who say, how dare you make ordinary people suffer? But by the way, because we're self-righteous about it and we say it's to do with clean air, we'll make you suffer by asking you for more money just because you're a driver.
Nobody's disagreeing with you.
I said before the old autumn statement, I said, I can't imagine what ways they can put more taxes on us. I hadn't thought of the ULEZ being expanded.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Because one of the things that people haven't said, and which I think is an important thing to say, is an awful lot of people like carers are going to be affected by it. Because carers, especially if you live in parts of the outskirts of London, there's no public transport to speak of. You have to have a car, and if you're caring for somebody where you're not getting paid at all, you're now going to have to pay an extra £12.50 to go from point A to point B.
So Sadiq Khan's I've been having this argument on social media and in real life, and they all say poor people don't have cars. Apart from the patronising nature of this, it shows you they don't know anyone who's ordinary, right?
No.
Because the kind of people who have cars, right, are the kind of people who are trying to, like mums, trying to get around, drop the kids off at school, pick up Mrs. Smith,
just
whole community, let alone people whose whole livelihoods is based. And I don't just mean taxi drivers, I mean people who are plumbers, people who are going about their work. And as it happens, when I start saying this, I immediately suddenly think, what business is it of anyone's why anyone drives a car? You don't have to justify it.
No, exactly.
You're allowed to have a car. Absolutely. It's a perfectly legal activity.
But it's like all these nutters
and you
that sit in City Hall.
They are literally trying to squeeze
that guy? Is it Will Norman, who's the guy who's the cycling czar, who basically puts out all of these statements all the time about let's get everybody out of their cars.
Let's pay some road tax, pay some insurance and stop shaving your legs.
That's how
by the way, congratulations to the good people of Greater Manchester who stopped Andy Burnham bringing in a similar scheme. The signs are up. He was ready to go.
I bet he does it now, though, because he'll look at London and he'll do it.
Bristol. I just came back from Bristol this weekend and they've implemented a similar sort of ULEZ zone in Bristol city centre. And I just thought Bristol's about this big. Why would you stop people from driving?
Bristol is like the People's Republic of Bristol now.
Well, exactly. But this is the thing. It's spreading. Sadiq Khan's ideology of not being able to manage a city is spreading to cities around England.
I used to live in Bristol.
Did you?
Yeah.
Bristol. And they used to call it Bristol.
All right down there?
All right. We used to get
the
student newspaper printed near Temple Meads.
My first daughter was born in South Mead Hospital, and I'll never forget it. They all talk like that. She said, your daughter will be a meter. I said,
oh, God.
South Mead Hospital, she'll be a meter. All right, mate?
A reader.
I went, absolutely not. We're going back to London.
Yes. Well, the thing about Bristol, right, the mayor, who I think is no longer there, but they did have this very, very outspoken mayor.
They did,
whose name I forget. But he introduced this, he banned diesel vehicles, right, from the centre of Bristol, never mind ULEZ. And then they worked out that the council had just bought about 50 diesel vans. So they immediately had to sell them again, and having taken all the... they just waste money hand over fist. And
I think the point is, it doesn't matter what kind of car you drive. They just basically do not want us to have the modern means of transportation. And one of the things that's always been brilliant about cars, diesel or otherwise, is that, particularly actually for women, it was freedom.
Yeah.
Right? It was,
and it's safety
it was your
as well.
place, right?
Safety.
You could get in there and drive somewhere, right? It gave you weren't stuck in the house, you know. This idea that, oh, let's go back to the days when we walked. I mean, it's called parochial, backwards society where nobody could get around.
Well, also, if you work
it's like go back into the village.
Lekan's got a chauffeur-driven car, though. Let's bear that in mind.
He's got more than one. He's got 4.
Yeah.
I mean, we might as well go back to horse riding.
Marvin Rees, by the way, is the guy I'm thinking
Marvin
of.
Rees, that's it.
Now, here's the other thing about the whole business of women and cars is that, you know, if you work late at night or something, I remember when I was working in newspapers, women used to get preference in the car park at Canary Wharf, so they didn't have to walk a half a mile to their car because it's dangerous at night. And if you're a nurse or if you're somebody who has, you're working late in a supermarket or something, you don't want to be waiting at a bus stop.
I spoke to a nurse once, and she was.
Don't believe that.
I don't speak back to you.
I loved it. I loved it.
Don't believe the story.
Well, a nurse phoned one of the shows that I did, and effectively she said, "Look, they keep telling us to go on night buses. Night bus at 4, 5 in the morning, full of drunk people, is just incredibly intimidating when you go for a morning shift."
But it's also like the last thing that we had to do, you know, before my mum, when she had to go in a home with dementia. But we literally had to prise the car keys out of her hands.
Yeah.
She knew that giving up the car keys was like the end of that.
My dad cried. Why took the car keys? When we said, why are you doing this?
Exactly.
Because
but
you're a
up
danger.
until she was well into her 80s, she was able to get in the car and, you know, perfectly safe. And it meant for her
I agree.
a sense of autonomy, a sense of control of
your life. You know what? On a serious note, he was devastated. I joke about it. He saw that as his last moment of freedom had gone. He was now, whether he was in a home or not, he had his car and he could just go gone.
Right.
Didn't like
exactly
it at all.
right. Now, we've got to move on because, Jeremy Kyle, it's your first nomination and it's going to be a popular one, I suspect.
I have to say, and I was trying to work out how to put this, Gary Lineker. Right.
You've won.
I mean...
Congratulations.
Let me start with this whole argument about the BBC being in Qatar. We're a public service broadcaster, they say. They don't show the opening ceremony while Lineker pontificates about green energy. Honestly, it's like a party political broadcast. It's heinous what Gary Neville's done. Everybody taking him over from this dreadful regime. And the wonderful news yesterday that this two-faced, hypocritical whatever who slags everybody, virtuous man, has trousered 1.6 million quid, that's 400 grand a year, for 4 years to work for the Qatari state broadcaster after they got the World Cup. So you know what, Mr. Lineker, you plank? Take your money, your morality, it does my head in, right? At least be honest. I don't like the regime, you should say, but I'm working there, I'm earning money. It is so hypocritical for me by a mile, the plank of the year.
And then he had the absolute temerity and audacity to come out afterwards and admit it, while trying to slag off the Daily Mail for pointing it out. And I think his line was, it's not very good when I don't remember things, or something like that. It's amusing. Yeah, it's amusing.
But no, it's not, Gary, because, don't get me wrong, I think if you are in a public position and like him, there seems to be one rule for every BBC employee and one for him, he can say anything. You know, he does those virtuous things. I'm taking Ukraine, I'm giving away money. Stop talking about it, because the people who really do it, Gary, don't talk about it on Twitter the whole time. But when you get found out, put your hands in the air. One big hypocrite, in my humble opinion.
Can I offer a defense of Gary Lineker?
Oh, get out.
No, you can't. No. Sorry, Esther, go.
This is a problem. When you come
Sorry, we're not having that.
I'll get my car.
Know your place, Walker.
Shut up.
When your entire career is about being a sanctimonious moron, unfortunately, when you get caught out with these things, it really does hurt your reputation and your credibility. I would say that the nuances of international politics are best left out of the hands of dim-witted celebrities. Because I don't know if you read this week, the Qataris are expanding our gas storage facilities in the second largest port. I believe it's in Wales. And we desperately need those gas storage facilities.
And we get all of our natural gas practically from Qatar.
From Qatar, exactly. But the thing is, they don't understand these things because they will pontificate and say, oh, Britain's going through a cost of living crisis. And I was like, yeah, how do you think that's going to work if you don't have gas?
Did you see the Qatari foreign minister saying that we paid Lineker for 4 years, and when he made these outrageous comments, we tried to engage with him, and he's refused to speak to them. And for me, right, be what you're going to be, say what you're going to be, defend it. But it's this high horse pontification about the rest of the world and anybody who's made money or is successful. Hold on, mate, you're trousering all this money. You can't defend him or you're sacked.
No, I'm not actually.
No matter which way you look at it, right? No matter which way you look at it, he should have come out if he wanted to be hard and fast about the regime. Don't interrupt me.
Sorry.
He used to say that he would never go and work in certain places. He said he wouldn't take Gary Neville's money. didn't he?
He
when
said
he was
it was
asked,
disgusting
he didn't
and
say,
wrong.
oh, actually, I already did take the money.
Did he never think that was going to come out then?
What he actually meant was taken as little money as he's agreed to take. I got 1.6 million.
I do think there is a bigger issue, though. We have failed spectacularly to deal with FIFA, with UEFA, with the IOC, all these corrupt international organisations, and we can slag people off.
Well, I would add to that the BBC, wouldn't you?
I'm sorry. I do think there's an issue with that, because at the end of the day, if the standard for not holding sports events is their records on LGBT rights, and that negates about 40% of the world, right? So I don't think it's fair to say that. I do think we should hold FIFA to account, because at the end of the day, they did award Qatar and there was a lot of bribery.
If we go back to how we started this, I didn't hear LINEKER moaning in 2018 in Russia.
Or the Olympics in Beijing.
I just find... At least Souness, who was on with us last night, said, look, I don't have to agree with what goes on. I'm here for the football. I'm doing my job. Right. Fronting it out.
But this is exactly what I was saying earlier about how the football has somehow got mired into this in a way that's kind of
ruined
take
almost
the joy out of being a fan, or never mind anything else.
It's part of
but you're basically watching the football, and in your ear is some sort of like moralising, and you kind of know.
But you know
are you allowed to agree?
Yeah, but you know why
are you allowed to
is?
enjoy it without having a rainbow on? You know what I mean?
But that's it, exactly right. Because the problem for England and for the FA of England is that they were the ones that started all this rubbish by taking the knee, saying, "Oh, we're going to wear an armband. We're going to stand up to FIFA."
And then they could.
Oh no, we're going to yellow card you. Oh, okay. Well, won't.
No, well, that's the whole point. Is nobody's asked them to be involved in politics.
I think they should have seen it through those armbands.
They should have put the armband on.
Absolutely gone through with what they said they did.
I do not think they should have seen through the armbands, but I don't also think that they should waste their time being involved in politics and take the knee. For me, it's like, you're footballers. Play football
going back
well.
to LINEKER, the excuse is not we're a public service broadcaster. They excuse the fact they're there and try and pontificate. You are there because it's shut up and do your job.
No, I know, but then tell us about the football. Either play football well.
We're going to have to stop, though, because we've got plenty of other planks to talk about. What I'm going to say to end the football chat, right, is what they should have done is what Gareth Bale did, because everybody said he did very well to boycott the World Cup altogether. Hardly turned up, did he? Might as well not have bothered.
I like that.
You like that?
Yeah.
Anyway, coming up next, we'll be nominating somebody who wants to ruin your Christmas, and his name rhymes with Grinch. Can I have my water back now? Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We are already underway, and already it's a bit controversial, I have to say, but I'm delighted to say that there's 3 more now coming up in this section. And Esther Krakue, it's up to you. Your go.
Yeah. My plank is China.
Excellent.
It's the whole country. Well, the CCP, let me be fair.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone's heard of the protests that have sparked off in China.
The white paper protests.
Which is incredible because of this insistence on the zero COVID policy.
Yeah.
And the fact that our Western media are acting like they didn't try and force similar measures on us just under 2 years ago. I mean, Trudeau came out saying, oh, we got to support the right of Chinese to protest. I'm like, really? Didn't you freeze the bank accounts of the Canadian truckers when they tried to do that?
Didn't he also steal their money when they
he literally froze them out of being able to access their funds. But also, what the catalyst for this event or these protests was the fact that people died. I think, the CCP say 10 people died. I think we both know in a country of 1.6 billion, it was a lot more than that. And the CCP are not known for being straightforward. They died because the fire services couldn't get in to save them because they've been welded into their apartments. Yeah. I mean, that's the brutality of this regime.
And I actually heard a government official defending that policy, saying, well, you know, if there's a case of COVID in one building, then those people should not go out. That's one way of doing it.
Do you think that, can you see the Chinese government falling over this? Can you see people power as the world has changed? Can you see China changing?
No, I don't see the regime falling over this. I think the thing is, you have to understand people's resolve is as strong as the government's resolve to bring down these protesters. But they have lifted some restrictions in the major cities like Beijing and Shanghai and some of the more economic powerhouses.
I mean, it is a massive change, though, because, you know, if you follow Chinese politics, really since Tiananmen Square, but actually even Tiananmen Square was largely students, what's happened with this issue is that people from cities and small towns and peasants and intellectuals are all up in arms.
And it's not coordinated.
And it's not coordinated, but it's normally the case that there's quite a lot of grumbling about the Chinese Communist Party by Chinese people in China all the time.
Yeah.
But this is actually people demanding.
You don't think it'll make a difference?
His resignation.
You know, that President Xi goes and demanding that there's democracy and freedom and free speech.
But
this is unprecedented in modern
Walker,
China.
Windsor.
Yeah, the problem that he's got, the problem that President Xi has got is very simply this. He can't stop this policy now because he's manifestly screwed up the whole vaccination programme. And
their vaccinations are awful, aren't they?
He's telling the world that he is running a competent government, and fundamentally now, if he attempts to unlock, that's going to be proved to be complete bunker. But he can't keep them locked up forever.
The biggest shambles is the media organisations and organisations like WHO that have defended the zero COVID policy from the beginning.
Well,
even after all these stories started, coming out. I mean, there was a piece in The Guardian saying, more people will die without the zero COVID policy. Well, my dear, people are dying anyway because they
I'll tell you,
eat.
the World Health Organization and that bogus doctor that leads it ought to be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah.
That man,
he's not actually a doctor.
Let's not forget.
Well, he holds a doctorate, but he makes it sound like he's a medical doctor.
He's not a medical doctor.
He is not a medical doctor.
But here's the thing: the World Health Organization was also the organisation that said that this was nothing to worry about. Back in the day when it was first discovered,
you pay for it in China.
I think
it won't jump from one.
It's quite relevant what he said, though, isn't it? I mean, what does he do? Does he carry on? Because everybody knows it's a line. If he opens up, they're going to find out. And
I don't think he's got a solution.
But I think the world should ask a bigger question. Why don't we know where COVID came from? Because the Chinese won't let us find out.
That's right.
And the WHO have been, and UN have been defending them. And
they went into China and they couldn't find out.
Well, the thing is that because they've actually defended them by saying, because Trump was racist, the Chinese authorities don't want to let us know about the origins of COVID, and that's that.
But I think that one of the things about the origins question, as Matt Ridley has basically written the book on this, was that actually there was an argument about whether it was the lab leak or not from China, and the disgusting piece of information was that the head of the Wellcome Trust, Jeremy Farrar, and various senior scientists said, we suspect it's a lab leak, but we don't want anyone to know that. And that was then branded as misinformation. So as much as I want to point the finger and say plank of the week for China, the problem is, as you've illustrated, actually quite a lot of people have said zero COVID policy should have been brought in here. Jeremy Hunt admired the Chinese Communist Party's anti-COVID lockdown measures and said we should emulate them. We know that a lot of the ideas for the authoritarianism of our own lockdowns came from China. And the people who are heroes in all this are the Chinese people. So actually,
I think it's amazing. Absolutely remarkable. I'm going to have to shut you up again now. That's enough about China. I don't really feel as if there's any kind of regime change going on here. But it's my turn. That's why.
And it's your show.
It's my show. It is. But it's all of ours.
No, it's yours.
Well, it is. You're right.
I mean, without you, there's no show.
Yeah, I did ask them to call it Mike Graham's Plank of the Week, but people said it might read like it's...
Mike Graham is the Plank of the Week.
Why does it say that then? Plank of the Week with Mike Graham. Couldn't fit it on the strap. That's the kind of people I'm dealing with.
Can I tell you a very, very quick
go on.
On the radio years ago in Birmingham, we had a programme called Jezza Leighton Live.
Yes.
And I used to get letters to Jezza Leighton.
Oh, dear God.
Brilliant. Right,
and
anyway,
I'm not joking.
I said that we were going to talk a lot about strikers today, and I'm going to talk about ambulance drivers. But I have to say, it could be expanded to the entire NHS, because this very morning, the head of the GMB union came out and said, we are going to coordinate the NHS strike so that it won't just be ambulance drivers, it won't just be anaesthetists, it won't just be nurses. We're going to all come out at the same time. Now, if you're going to tell me that somehow does not put people's lives at risk, I will call you a liar, because it will put people's lives at risk.
Absolutely.
We're now going to have a strike on the 15th of December and the 20th of December. Anyone with any sort of procedure during that period will probably have it
Just
cancelled.
don't die.
We also get a story today that people are waiting over an hour, having had a heart attack, to get an ambulance. So if they do go on strike, what's the difference?
We did this last night, and you might be surprised. I completely understand what you're saying in terms of nurses and ambulance workers. The problem is when you do, let's just take nurses as an example, and one can wonder whether it's going to be a general strike and everybody's just coordinating.
It will be. That's what they're doing.
But how, for example, do nurses, and I'm not saying they should get 17, how do they strike? And now it's illegal, of course, for the police. So all right, if that's the case, how do they get a pay rise?
Well, they should decentralise the national health system.
No, I tell you exactly how to get a pay rise. They got a pay rise in April because there is a pay review body which recommends completely separately to the government, right? Yes, they do. And they would have done the same thing, which would have included inflation for April of next year. But they didn't want that. That wasn't good enough.
Isn't the truth that none of these unions are going to get an inflation? Because we can't afford it.
But I do think, first of all, I don't think that all unions are the same. I just want to say, so I support the RMT strike. I've said this to Mike before.
Oh, dear.
I know. I do.
Well, £59,000 train driver.
Call for security.
It's boring to. It's boring. It's boring.
I
to have that
support the man or the woman in the ticket office, but
I'm
not a
trying to
driver
make a point about the ambulance.
£59,000.
I know, but I'm just making the point. I
like
do.
her.
UCU going on strike, which is the lecturers' union, I've got very little sympathy with because they closed down the universities and refused to teach face-to-face during lockdown and let their students down. So I think, do me a favour, right? So I think you make differences. On the ambulance, it's really interesting. There was a guy on from the ambulance union a couple of nights ago on something, and he said, don't worry, nobody will die from this because if there's an emergency, we're going to make sure they get an ambulance. And I thought it might be better than on non-strike days then, because the truth is the services that these organisations are striking against have collapsed. So my argument about the rail workers, for example,
no one's going to notice.
I have to get trains every week.
Driverless trains.
I'm saying I have to get trains every week, and Avanti West Coast has collapsed.
It's a shambles.
It's I know where I am with the strike. You know, I'm meant to be going on non-strike days. The government said they're going to bring in some minimum service regime, make it illegal.
But you'd give them. Let's cut to the
I'm saying it's not the unions that are causing that.
But you would give train drivers more money.
I think the train drivers are yes.
But where are you getting the money from?
Well, do you know what's interesting here, right? Is that Andre's next nominee is actually MICK LYNCH, so we can fold.
Well, let's roll into it.
So let's fold
seamless.
in.
One of the things I want to say about Avanti West Coast, I had no sympathy for them whatsoever until I discovered what had happened. The government gave the franchise to Avanti, took away the franchise from Virgin, and Virgin organised a boycott of overtime in order to destroy Avanti. Now, I personally think that when the trade unions are trying to overrule a decision by the government to give it to Avanti, that's when you start having to say that we're under siege as a country and it's despicable. MICK LYNCH, the Grinch, I actually think what we should do with MICK LYNCH, very simply, not just give him Plank of the Week, is to say this, that if your strike is disproportionately damaging to the public, i.e. you're striking over 50 quid, but you're going to shut the railways, you have to personally pay for people to be transported. You have to personally pay for them to be compensated. First the union. When the union becomes insolvent, the members themselves, you could have the court deciding what is egregious.
I have to tell you, Andre, I interviewed him when I did Piers Morgan during the summer. And he's probably one of the most well-rehearsed people. He's got a script.
He's a class act.
And he sticks absolutely to his script.
I think you'd be
and his modus operandi is, I'm trying to get a better deal. For me, and we talked last night a lot about strikes, whether people like this or not, there ain't no money. We're skint.
Yes, but this is the...
No, there really isn't any money.
No, I do understand. You don't have to explain it to me.
No, but where do you get it from? When people say, where are you going to get it from, Claire?
Right. In the whole reorganisation of society, we've just done a budget, for example, right? The people who should not have to put up with the cuts aspect are people's salaries. We've just made a point about there's all sorts of priorities that go on in society. You make decisions. And I quite straightforwardly think that the people who run the trains don't run them well. The people who run in the NHS are wasting lots of money hand over fist. The people who I do think, as it happens, are entitled to say, we're not paying for the mess you created, are the workers.
Why do we never argue about care workers? Why is it always train workers?
No, excuse me.
Care workers should get
care
so
workers
much of a
are
rise.
people that I've fought for a very long time.
Amazing.
But as it happens, they are on the side of a lot of the people who are arguing.
But when you were talking about...
set people up against each other.
When you were talking about the people really responsible, can I just say one thing very quickly?
Don't ask if you can say something, because I'll say no.
OK. CDOs, collateralised debt obligations, we are at the same level as 2008. The banks hold as much collateralised debt as they did in 2008. Blind CDOs, we have more than 2008. Yeah. So, you know, if you're worried about the money being lost by idiot bankers, it may well happen again.
Yeah, it may well do. But the great thing is that when we get told on the one hand there's no money, suddenly they find some more money for something else. So
exactly.
They
really
do make
440 billion.
I'd like to go back to Claire's point, the original point, which is not all unions are the same, which is true. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, every union in every industry is particularly unique. For the trains, for instance, I don't think the trains and the nature of train infrastructure or rail infrastructure in this country, it's very difficult to make it competitive and to make it run efficiently. If you look at Switzerland, it's very easy to go shopping and then take a train home, right? You have bankers, filthy rich bankers in Geneva that take trains to work and then go home. And the infrastructure is so much more sophisticated that using trains is a very easy.
But they subsidise them.
But it's not the same in the
UK.
Rail
subsidise them.
But most ordinary people have been priced out of the railways. I can't even. I take coaches everywhere now because
I know.
Rail privatisation. So I think what's true. Well, when I travel, I do. I took a coach to Bristol because I couldn't afford the trains. But it's true. So it's a different industry. But for something like for the nurses, for instance, I said, well, it might have been helpful if we actually gave them a pay rise instead of clapping for them. But I also think, well, you know, most people that don't work in the public sector can't ask for a 19% pay rise. So there is that element of where does public sympathy lie?
Rail privatisation, and now we've got rid of the Cones hotline, is the only thing left of John Major's time as Prime Minister. And, you know, that guy was absolutely useless.
No, Claire's absolutely right. You know, but the problem with this country is nothing works, right? And it's
I know nothing does work.
People running things don't know what they're doing.
But the people who are watching and listening to this programme all work in different areas, right? And they're so frustrated. I mean, the reason why Mick Lynch actually has a resonance is because he had that campaign that's called Enough is Enough, and you've got to have some sympathy. But the point that you were making about, Mike, you said, no, nurses shouldn't go on strike, and there's a pay. The difficulty is that if you are a worker, the only thing you've got is your threat of withdrawing your labour, right? I mean, that's historically been quite important
I think it's not as
to get any of us where we are now.
If you're on 100 grand a year on the West Coast Main Line as a driver,
well, I mean,
how bad is it for you?
Outside of the numbers, I think if we look at it in perspective, I think it was like roughly 20% of the entire British workforce is actually unionised. So it's not the same like in the 60s and the 50s.
Exactly.
So the impact, again, is, I think for the train drivers, for instance, they get a really raw deal because the impact on most people is a lot less. Either they have cars, they can take coaches. If you live in London, you're sorted. I mean, really, I think they have the Royal Mail workers, they have the sort of the smallest bargaining chip. But it's true. If you don't have that much bargaining power, the public sympathy is not going to be with you. Because the average construction worker can't ask for 90%.
With nurses, I think because it's vocational, right? And because we assume and believe they will always be there, I have a degree of sympathy how those sorts of people are indeed supposed to stick their head above the parapet. You talk about the review, and I get that. But this, to me, increasingly feels like it is coordinated and we're heading towards a general strike.
But
because
there's no question
it's almost everybody every day.
At the end of the day, there is no business anymore in this country, apart from the public sector business, and I include the trains, even though I know they're semi-privatised, that has this kind of large-scale collective bargaining, trade union over there, owners over there, you know, let's all get together. Do you remember when they used to meet in that place in...
But I liked your point, which is, all I'm saying is, this is one expression of the fact that people in this country feel as though nothing's working, right? And we've just admired, you know, like the Chinese people going out and... I mean, basically what people are saying is, I've had it. I mean, why can't things work, right? And a lot of the work... I mean, some of the... We all know there's a problem in lots of glutted public sector sections that actually should be, you know, that actually cuts would help. But it's just that ordinary people who are working them are so fed up because they want to deliver a service. They can't. There's an awful lot of us who want to actually avail of that service and they can't.
But if we've got to stop because we're running over and the man in the sky will get very annoyed with me. Coming up next, we're going to be nominating a president who's probably asleep. Wonder who that could be. This is Plank of the Week. Pointing at me for? It's a lot of pointing. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. It is Friday night, so we're almost halfway through the show. I'm going to pick the winner at the end. It used to be much more democratic than that, but we decided to go down the China route instead. And actually, I choose who wins, and nobody else has any say. However, Claire Fox, probably the most democratic person here. Now it's now your turn.
And I'm in the House of Lords. Unelected, so that's even better.
Yeah, go on. Unelected despots are us.
Yeah.
What's your next?
So my
maneuver?
next, I am passionately furious with the BBC. Now, this might not shock everyone, but you've got to bear in mind, I'm a BBC type, right? I do the BBC programmes, I like the BBC. I want to believe in the ideals, and they have come out and said that they're not getting very many ordinary CDE type people watching them. Ofcom has been a bit critical. You're not getting enough working class people. So they've said, oh, don't worry, what we're going to do is we're going to make simpler programmes for them so that will attract them. We're going to make sports documentaries and reality TV. So they're completely betraying their educational brief. Also, they managed to imagine, right, that if you have, if you are poor, that you're stupid, that, you know, high art's not for you, we'll give you the worst kind of junk. It's dumbing down, patronising, and furious.
Listen, hang on. Jeremy Kyle, a man who knows a thing or two about...
Dumbing down.
No. Come on.
Can I say very honestly, what I find extraordinary about that whole thing is it's all right for people at the BBC or in other news organisations or television networks to say a certain class of person, OK, should not be entitled to either be on television or have a television programme they want. Now, I'm not going to talk about what you want me to talk about, but it is a fact that I can say this, that there are certain programmes in the past that were criticised, and yet if you've got a six-pack and perfect teeth, you can stay on the television. For me, that BBC comment is outrageous.
It is.
Absolutely outrageous. That's on a par with Gary Lineker.
Yeah. What I find extraordinary...
I think it's between the two of us.
What I find extraordinary is the BBC is so elitist that they've managed to make a district of Salford posh.
Yeah.
I mean, how on earth...
I'm going to tell you a very true story from my time in Manchester. I'm going to get into trouble. The BBC spent £257,000. We were all up in Media City. And the BBC spent £257,000 on a bunch of, I don't know, sort of... when they sort out what an area would be, some sort of a bunch of people, a committee, and they came back and it was find some nice areas in sort of Manchester and the surrounding countryside that are executive concerned. And I promise you that they came back with Didsbury, right? Didsbury, which is reasonably nice.
Yes.
Not famous for dogging. And Didsbury, I'd like to drop that in, Didsbury, they said, would be a perfect example. Local theatres, several restaurants, several bars. The only thing we can find wrong is BBC pay for this, you will pay for this, there's only one cheese shop. That, my friend, is an absolutely true story about the BBC. Didsbury's no good, there's only one cheese shop.
When they said that they were going to appeal to young people, they then said, oh, this is the patronising bit, where they said, we're bringing back BBC Three, right? We're getting rid of BBC Four. So this is the home of that fantastic series called Civilization, which has been watched by millions and millions. One of the things is, when you I remember meeting a bunch of ordinary kids who'd actually come out of the gates in India who'd all watched the Civilization series, right, and been inspired by it. They said BBC Three and RuPaul's Drag Race, right? Now, I'm not making a comment on that. I'm saying they think that is their flagship programme. For them, in order to appeal to young black people, you have rap people on. You know what I mean?
It's and like, drag queens.
And then they think opera is for a type.
It's really patronising, but we have to move on because this show's going so quick.
I feel I'm going to get
quick.
I obviously...
Well, you're eating into your own plank now.
No, all right, OK. Well, Lady HUSSEY has been in the news this week for what can only be described as a pretty appalling treatment of a black lady from a charity at a Buckingham Palace reception. Within 5 hours of this being tweeted out by the aforementioned woman, Lady HUSSEY had spent 60 years working for the royal family, was sacked or resigned. I do have a degree of balance because I've been talking in the green room, you know, very old-fashioned. But there is absolutely, in this world, there is no place for that at all. And that is why I'm not...
But in this world today, what you say is more important than what you do. 60 years of public service, unpaid, nobody gives a toss because she was a little bit cack-handed with somebody.
Even Prince William, who was her godson, didn't hesitate to throw her under the
and
bus.
within 5 hours, which is pretty astonishing. And then you wonder, the bigger picture, of course, is William and Kate are off to America. You've got the Sussexes who have just launched the little Netflix documentary.
It's a global
trailer.
event, apparently.
It's a global event, her crying and having a coffee.
Yeah.
And then you think it's a whole PR war. I do have a degree of sympathy, but I have to tell you, in the world we live in, what she... I mean, apparently she lifted this lady's hair back, peered at her badge and went, "Where are you from?" You can't do that.
Here's the thing.
That's plankish behaviour.
And I get that. And I think
but is it destroy her behaviour? Is she bad enough to be publicly vilified in the way she's
But she will in that world. The world we live in now, you know she will.
I do get that. But this is the thing. And I actually think if I was in the lady's shoes and she peered and saw looked at my name and she kept badgering me about my origins, I'd be like, "Are you a debt collector? Like, why are you so insistent?" So I get it was
you would have been offended, though.
I wouldn't have been offended, but I would have put her in a place.
I mean, you could have done a number of different
things. Because the thing is,
I wouldn't have been offended. The reaction has been way over the top.
I wouldn't have been offended because, one, I'm just made of tougher stuff, but also the lady's 83, right? I wouldn't enjoy seeing her taken down like this, and I understand there's a generational... I mean, yesterday we could say only women get pregnant. Now we can't even say that, right? The Overton window has shifted so much that actually keeping up with what's politically correct is more difficult.
Do you all think that actually, because of 60 years of service and because of the speed with which the palace just airbrushed her into history, do you think there will be a movement and people will be sympathetic?
I don't think the royal family...
we should forget the fact it was a very racist...
Somebody should have just said, "Shut up, you silly old bag," and then walk off and forget about it.
And I don't think the palace looks good off.
I think there's a very worrying sign here, which is it's ironic that in the name of anti-elitism and doing the right thing, the royal family have really exerted power and been cruel. I mean, they've just got rid of this woman, right? I mean, that is like the real elitism,
the other thing, just very quickly, is I suspect Madam in Californian mansion, who talked about institutionalised racism, is sitting there thinking, what marvellous timing. That's the real sadness
That's the real problem with all of this, is that she'll be turning up with old, the Duke of Netflix to get their award for stopping the institutional racism in the royal family. And they'll go, "See, told you."
So maybe she's been sacrificed.
But the royal family, I think, have made a terrible error by dealing with it so harshly. And then the second thing is, it's become a huge political issue. So I was up very early. I was flicking through all the channels today. It's the main news story on everything, right?
Not on my show.
No, but it was the main news story, and I'm saying that... And people are then saying... One 83-year-old lady proves that Britain is institutionally racist, that the royal family is institutionally racist, that racism is rampant, and serious racial attacks are being compared to somebody being rude and ill-mannered, and, by the way, with racial overtones. I mean, there is...
We've got to stop. It suits the lefties' narrative. You've eaten into your plank now.
I have,
okay. It's now time for you. You've only got about a minute.
Okay, right, my plank is...
your own plank.
I don't think I need that much time. It's Joe Biden.
Yeah,
well done.
He's always a plank. And,
Is he still alive?
Nobody knows.
Barely, just about.
Oh, where are you, Esther? Sorry, go on.
What country am I president of? And it's Joe Biden because his administration, for all their virtue signalling and all the virtue signalling people they have in the administration, they're easing up sanctions on Venezuela, which is the beacon of democracy, as we all know.
Of course.
And they've implemented this program where the Venezuelans are sending them oil to pay off some of the debts that Maduro has accrued in his time as president. But the really interesting thing is, these people are saying that the most environmentally friendly regime, he passed that, Inflation Reduction Act, which is supposed to tackle various forms of pollution and climate change. Exactly. And he's happy for other countries to pump oil and then pollute the environment, but he's not happy to do it in his own country. That's been
our energy policy for the last 30 years.
Exactly.
We've been buying gas from Qatar, oil from Europe, electricity from any place we can get it, stick up a couple of wind farms and hopefully get along with it.
I remember Ken Livingstone doing this when he invited Hugo Chavez over so he could do a cheap oil deal. So people in Venezuela who had no money were subsidising people in London. I don't know why they're obsessed with Venezuela.
Isn't that where Corbyn gets his coffee from as well?
Yeah, that's right.
Venezuela.
But the thing is, Venezuelans' oil production capacity has been so run down. I mean, they're producing about a maximum 600,000 barrels a day. That's down from 4 million, just 10 years ago. So they're 3 to 4 million. So their oil production capacity has been depleted. And yet still the Biden administration is saying, we want to suck up as much oil as this country who produces about 2% of the world's oil. As much as we can.
Unbelievable. We're out of time, I'm afraid. Coming up next, though, I'm going to pick the plank of the week. I'm also going to nominate one more plank because there's still one to go. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week, the final furlong, because, of course, this is the bit where we choose who is going to be Plank of the Week. But we've had a lot of great nominations. There's still one more to go, and this is from me. And I'm afraid it's, once again, the Metropolitan Police. The people who are supposed to... Yeah, the Metropolitan Police. Because it's so metropolitan. You know, I think it's a good name for them. Let's just call them the Metropolitan Elite Police.
The Met Pet.
And then that would be even better.
Completely.
You know, do you know what they did on Sunday, right? We all got word that Just Stop Oil... Very little. Just Stop Oil were going to come back, and they were going to have 2 weeks of, rolling protests, and they were going to be in London.
Half term was over.
I mean, obviously they've taken an early break for Christmas, and the universities have shut down because of the strike. So they're all out. And the police, instead of just deciding to kind of cut them off at the pass and arrest them before they did what they were going to do, they put out a tweet which actually said, effectively, we know what you're going to do and we're ready for you, right? And the tweet actually said, we're fully prepared, we will arrive quickly, we will deal with the situation efficiently, we will remove and arrest activists as appropriate, and we will return things to normal as soon as possible. Now, out of all of those 4 things, how many of them do you think they did?
0.
None. Absolutely not one. 0 for 4, as we would say in baseball. And they completely just... So the Just Stop Oil activists, instead of gluing themselves to something, just started walking slowly in front of the traffic, right? And the police were completely flummoxed by this, so clearly they weren't prepared for that. And so what they decided to do was walk with them. So they were walking alongside them, watching them. At one point, these guys just went into the pub, the Wetherspoons, in
they stood outside, didn't they?
And they stood outside.
Waiting.
And Just Stop Oil were tweeting, going, it's a shame the old cops are outside. You know, it seems a bit of a waste of public money. I mean, what are they doing?
I remember when there was all those protests at Clapham Junction. I lived above a shop in that area when they were burning shops down.
That's not a surprise.
It's absolutely... Yeah, but I'll tell you something on a serious note, Jeremy. It was terrifying when shops were being torched and you lived above a shop and the police were doing absolutely nothing
just
other than high-five.
Watching it go.
Disgraceful.
But this, what's happened now is really funny because they use as a bit of an excuse that they needed all these new laws because... What can you do with new tactics like people gluing their hands onto things and all this, right?
Rip it off.
No, but I'm saying that's the excuse they use for the new laws. So we can't really do anything until we've got the new laws. You don't really need a new law if somebody decides to not glue themselves on the road, but to walk slowly.
But then I think to defend a little bit to defend policemen and women on the streets. They're only as good as the laws, their bosses, and what they're allowed to do in the criminal justice.
Yeah, but the law is very clear that you are not allowed to hold.
Well, the law needs to change. The criminal justice.
It doesn't need to change.
But
there are plenty of laws on the statute book that they won't police.
They won't police. They don't need any more.
Why not?
They were walking slowly down the road. Take them off the road.
Why won't they arrest them?
Calm down. Look, we've got to get to the end of the show. We've got to finish. We've got 30 seconds left. We've got no time for your questions. I'm afraid. I'll have to get the police in to shut this whole thing down. Now, who's won, she says, right? I'll tell you who's won. It's between Gary Lineker for me, it's between SADIQ Khan, and I can't really single out the ambulance driver, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give it, not to Gary Lineker, although he should get it, I'm going to give it to SADIQ Khan, because he has waged a war against the ordinary people of this country for too long. That's Plank of the Week, and here it is, SADIQ Khan, there you go.
Congratulations.
That means I won.
That means I didn't win.
Came very close.